up your engine. Here we go, problem. Toyota Sienna, it's losing coolant. Can't see it losing coolant anywhere, but it's losing it. It's not magic unless she has evil children who are sneaking in at night and sucking coolant out. There's a problem. We got to figure it out, so we'll go step by step. So first things first, we'll check the coolant. I had my big fan running, so it's cool. You don't want to do it hot. We'll open it up and look inside. And it's empty, so it's going somewhere. So before we pressure test it, we'll take this crap off so we can see all the hoses. And we're gonna get my pressure testing machine. You can't beat pressure testing. Now this OTC pressure tester is cool because it's got a bulb. It's universal. It'll fit just about everything. The business end goes on top of the radiator cap hole. You squeeze it so it's locked in place. The button's pushed here. That does the bladder. That makes the bladder big so it seals. Then we push it again. Now it's pressurizing the system. We pressure test it. This is about a 15-pound system, so we'll put 15 pounds of pressure in. As you can see, I got it about 15, 16 pressure. We watch it and see if it loses pressure. If it does, that means it has a leak. We should be able to see the leak. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's the heater core inside the dash. It can be inside the engine cylinder, lots of places. But always pressure test it first. We can see the pressure starting to go down very slowly. Now it's at about 15. It was a little bit above, about 16. So it's got a very slow leak. So let's look under and pray we see a drip somewhere. Nothing dripping yet. Not a good sign. Oh, there we go. Right above here, it's dripping. Now we can't see it from the top, so we'll jack it up and check the bottom. In goes the jack. And in this case, it was very easy to jack up because big old solid part here. Now we can see the drip and we'll look up. There it is dripping down. And when we look, where's it dripping from? Dripping from right here. Man, it looks like it's just a loose radiator clamp. Look at that, it's loose as can be. Not stop dripping. But of course, don't stop there. If there's one thing I learned from my old man, it's just because you found one leak, don't think there are any others. So we're gonna pump it back up and then let it sit. As you can see, we got about 16 PSI. We'll let it sit for a while. Never, ever assume you find a leak, that's the only one. Always double check your work. And while we're waiting, we'll see how many miles this baby's got on it. It's got 288,000 miles on it. That many miles, many things can go wrong, so I'm gonna add one thing before I'm done after I check for pressure leaks again. When I'm done and I see no more pressure leaks, I'm gonna put some of this Bars radiator and heater core stop leak in it. Works in water or antifreeze. Used with all types of coolant, yellow, orange, pink, red, blue, and green silicose base, and non-silicose base, oat antifreeze, and or water. Many of the sealers will only work with water. Some will only work with the all green antifreeze. This does work with them all. I've used it for years. It's a good preventative measure on an old car like this. Now the pressure's staying up, but as I look around, I can see there's a little bit of seepage down on the bottom and realize the water pump is inside this V6 engine. Now the customer stated she didn't want to go over $300 repair. Changing the water pump timing belt on this is well over that. If it is seeping a little, all water pumps seep a little, but if it's just seeping a little, the sealer could stop that entirely, because if it does need a water pump, it's going to be a very, very expensive repair because this has so many miles on it. You would really have to change the water pump, the timing belt, the pulley, the tensioner pulley. It would be a very expensive job, including the crank oil seals, the cam oil seals. You could easily spend over $1,000 doing that job. In this case, the pressure stayed the same, so we're going to let the old pressure off. Push the button. Magic. Take the pressure tester off. First we'll add the sealer, pour it right in. And we're going to start it up and turn the heater and AC on full blast so you get the fans and cooling action. This is an old vehicle, so it's made so you could turn both the heat and the AC on. The heat will send coolant through the heater core to help cool it and get air out of the system, and the AC will turn the cooling fans on. While we're at it, let's check those fans to make sure they're working. Yeah, they're blowing plenty of air. They're working. Always make sure the cooling fans are working. If they don't work, you're going to boil coolant out. Make sure everything's working. Then we'll pour the hot Asian coolant in. And you notice, I still got it jacked up in the air. And that's because the higher up in the air you make the neck of the radiator, the more the air will gravitate there and burp itself out the top. You always want the front as high as possible when you're filling it up. And now it's full, we'll put the radiator cap back on. It's a pressure cap, so we release the pressure release so it's on tight. Off we go on a test drive. Starts right up. Well, we'll turn the heat off now. It's too hot. We'll just run AC. And away we go. Drive it at least 15-20 minutes to check everything. Now, as you can see, the temperature gauge is staying nice and low. It's not overheating at all. Now, these old Sienna vans amaze me. Came off the highway. Look, it's running under halfway. even though it's got 288,000 miles and the AC. It's freezing cold. I had to turn it down because even though it's 98 out here, I was getting too cold. These are amazing vehicles. Now, even though it's running fine and it's not leaking, don't think you're done, because sometimes air pockets are in. We drove it around half an hour. Now we're going to let it sit an hour and cool down, because air pockets might have migrated. We'll check the coolant, but we're going to wait an hour for it to cool down. We just double check under here, and it's dry as a bone. It's not dripping anymore. But as I said, we're going to wait about an hour for it to cool down, and we might have to top it up with some coolant. And in this case, let's check it out. Just needs a tiny amount of coolant. It's almost full. That's it. Now it's full. So the next time your vehicle's losing coolant, why not fix it yourself and save a ton of money? And here's some bonus questions and answers. Trav FDY, hey Scotty, when is it too late to supercharge an engine? All right, you don't want to supercharge an engine when it's old and worn out, because supercharging, all it does is it rams more air in the engine, just like a turbocharger. And as it rams in air, that increases the compression pressure. The more pressure in an engine, better odds are it's going to blow up when you rev it up high. Let's say you can supercharge any engine you want. Realize maybe it's going to blow up. Pros, they will build the engine up first and make it strong, then they'll supercharge it. But I mean, if you don't care and you got a junky engine, you could supercharge it, and then when it blows up, you could put another engine in. There's always different ways of doing stuff. Easton Mohammed said, Scotty, Toyota Land Cruiser V8 200 diesel versus Lexus LX 570 V8 petrol, which one you'd recommend and why? I'm from down under. Okay, you're in Australia, get the Land Cruiser with the diesel. Australia, people have been using diesels forever. Diesels can take the heat, they can take the cold. They're well-built vehicles, and those things can run forever. I got a friend in Australia who's got a Toyota diesel. I think he's got 400,000 miles on it. It still runs. Get the diesel. That would be, they can run forever. Home Dad says, I got an 85 Camaro with a fully blown 454 V8. Is that a good starter car for my 18-year-old? Well, one, it depends if it's a boy or a girl. If it's a boy, it's probably a horrible starter car because they'll probably kill themselves in it. It would be too fast. I would not give an 18-year-old a Camaro with a blown 454 V8 engine. It's not a smart move. You want to start slower and work your way up. It's like the guys in California. They even had to change the laws in California for motorcycle sales. They were selling the grocery baggers in California, motorcycles that would go 180 miles an hour. Kid would get it, and they'd sell it to them with no money down, and they'd kill themselves on the highway driving like maniacs. You can't get an 18-year-old kid, put him on a 180-mile-an-hour motorcycle. It's just asking for trouble. I mean, if he's conservative and he wants to learn how to work on it and stuff, yeah, it's easier to work on the old ones, but the actual speed involved, maybe not such a smart idea. Okay, says Scotty, do you think South Korean cars use the bar set by Japanese car makers or European mix? They're trying to copy the Japanese. They were terrible cars to begin with, kind of like the Japanese cars. The original Honda had a motorcycle engine in it. They were terrible little cars, but they kept improving them. Well, the Korean cars are kind of the same. They started out horrible, and they're improving them. They're still not as good as the Toyotas or Hondas. They are kind of following that mold. I still would buy a Toyota or Honda, though. They're better quality. And I'm cheap. I buy stuff when it's old, so I'm getting an old car. And an old Korean car is going to be in much worse shape than an old Toyota or Honda. That's just a fact of life. Amash Garg says, Scotty, are there any relationships between an engine's NVH levels, average miles per gallon, power, engine displacement? How do you know the reliability of an engine without knowing build quality? Well, you can't. You have to know what the build quality is. That's why Toyotas are so popular. They don't build the fastest engines, the most complex engines, but they generally build the engines that last the longest. Now, take a close one, Honda. Honda actually makes more four-stroke motors in the world than any other company because they make it for all kinds of stuff. They're a very good engine company. Now, a lot of times the Toyota engines will outlast the Hondas, but the Hondas outperform the Toyotas. So it depends on what you want. There's so many different variables involved in engine. Do you want a little bitty one that's a 1.4 liter, but it's got a turbocharger and puts out 280 horsepower? Or do you want something reliable, like a big V8 engine that maybe it's just normal? It has normal fuel injection, no GDI, no turbochargers. Maybe it puts out 300 horsepower normally. Well, if you want long life, that's better than a little tiny one that's got all these supercharged stuff on it. You got to look at all the variables. Dennis Miranda says, I have his 95 S10. It needs a new transmission. Is it worth it? Not really. Oh, worn out thing? Yeah, I'm sure you're talking about automatic transmission. Now, if you could get, let's say, a already built one, because a lot of guys rebuild them in an old thing I had in 95, they might have them lying around, and they want to sell them cheap. And you could buy one, have it put on for less than $1,000, and you like the truck, go ahead. Otherwise, no, I'd get rid of it. It wouldn't be worth fixing. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.